So, Gregor, clerks are often dealing with situations where they have too much material in their vaults and they have poor equipment for storing that material. What can they do?
Well, there are a number of things that they can do. One of which is to really assiduously follow the municipal records retention schedule, because oftentimes what we've got when we go realize it in going into vaults is that there's a lot of material there that really shouldn't have been. It should have been disposed of because of its time frame. And following the schedule will often free up enough space, or if not enough, at least a bunch of space that people are using. The other thing is, taking this course, one of the advantages is you find out how you can arrange and describe the materials that are there and house them properly. So as a consequence, they're not just put on the shelf, but they're put in boxes, appropriate boxes, put on the shelf in order, and you gain space that way.
So, what are the steps to preservation?
Preservation of the materials deals with a number of things. It deals, number one, with your environment, probably the one thing that has the most impact in relation to your collections. Because even though a lot of times people will say, well, putting in an HVAC system, an appropriate HVAC system, is a lot. It's, when you look at the conservation work of individual volumes, they're a lot. That's a lot too. So monitoring the temperature and the humidity over time gives you hardcore data that says, okay, this is not good or this is good. And we're looking at particular parameters that you want to look at and try to keep them. Temperature you want to keep below 70 degrees on a regular basis. If it's an area or a vault or a storage area where people don't go on a regular basis, keeping it down as low as 55 or even lower is more than fine. Below 55, there usually needs to be a time frame acclimated for when you're bringing materials out of it. But basically below 70 degrees. Relative humidity, you want to keep between 30 and 55%. Below 30%, the problem is, and this happens a lot in the winter, you have mechanical damage. The materials actually become brittle. Over 55%, when you're starting looking at 60, 65, 70%, you're looking over a period of time, you're looking at a possible mold growth.
So is it okay to just keep the temperature and humidity more or less like the office temperature and humidity?
The office humidity,
It cools
that'll
down
be
at
difficult.
night.
It'll go down at night. Basically, what you're trying to look at is trying to keep things as constant as possible, so that you're not dealing with major changes. Now, the temperature, the materials, will acclimate to changes in temperature relatively quickly, within hours. Relative humidity, particularly if they're stored properly, could take days, weeks, or even months to acclimate to the new level. So what you're trying to do is trying to keep it relatively constant, but by the same token, avoid the extremes. You don't want, and over a period of time, the individual spikes or what have you usually don't have much impact on the collections because they haven't acclimated. But if the temperature goes up, for example, to 75, 80 degrees on a regular basis across the whole winter, for example, or the relative humidity is up in that range percentage-wise over the summer, then you have the problem. You're increasing the degradation, the speed of degradation of the materials.
So how do you show that? We don't watch things deteriorate under our eyes.
No, exactly. And you do it by monitoring. You use either a recording thermal hygrometer, you do it with temperature humidity data loggers over a period of time. The advantage of data loggers is that you can get all the data onto a single graph, whereas recording hygrothermographs, you've got to line up all these sheets of paper across the hall to try to find out what's actually happening. But the advantage of, and another advantage of data loggers is that you can set the time frame so that they can take a reading every 30 minutes or every hour or every 15 minutes, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And so as a consequence, we'll see the changes that occur over time.
And so what about disaster plans?
Disaster plans are the one area that people tend not to do things about, but can have a major impact on how you're going to recover following a disaster. As I mentioned a number of years ago with some people, fire, police, and emergency managers, who said, when I introduced myself as a librarian archivist, they said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Can you recover your town, following a disaster if you don't have the town records?" And sort of like the bells went off. Having a disaster plan allows you, in a time of non-stress, to prioritize your recovery, to organize your supplies that you need, to educate and inform others about what's going on and what you need to do, and also to make people realize that just because materials get wet doesn't mean that they have to get thrown away, that they can be recovered. It also allows you to realize that materials that you may have thought you couldn't have recovered, you can recover them. There's also the steps that you can take that will mitigate a disaster because of the plan. For example, moving materials off the floor, minimum of 6 inches off the floor onto shelves, making sure that they're not stored under pipes. If you're in an area where there is rivers or other water sources, what are the possibilities that could overflow? And so thinking about these from the risk point of view allows you to then take appropriate steps, to protect your collections.
You know, Gregor, I'm realizing preservation is far more active than I realized. It's not just tucking things away.
No.
We actually have to do things.
You have to do things, you have to be aggressive about doing it, active about doing it. But in the long term, the results are very important, because it means, among other things, our history is still there, the history of the towns is still there, and the records are there.